Are you a businesswoman who is finding it challenging to get your ideas across and make a point? Welcome to Speakers Who Get Results with Elizabeth Bachman, a podcast dedicated to helping women get the visibility they want, whether making a speech or talking in a meeting. Every week, get valuable lessons from Elizabeth or learn from her roundtable conversations with experts and speakers on how to make a difference, not just a point. On to the show with your host, Elizabeth Bachman.
Hello and welcome to Speakers Who Get Results. I'm Elizabeth Bachman, your host, and this is the podcast where we interview experts from around the world on topics such as leadership, visibility, presentation skills, diversity, and communication challenges, nationally and internationally. Before I get on to this very interesting interview, let me suggest that if you're curious how your presentation skills are doing, you can check our free 4-minute quiz. That's www.speakforresultsquiz.com. And that's where you can find out where your presentation skills are strong and where perhaps a little bit of support could get you the results you need and the recognition you deserve. My guest today is Jennifer Landgren, who is the Director of Digital Platforms at Dentsply Sirona. And she is someone I've known for a couple of years now who really has wonderful insights into how to be authentic, how to make yourself heard, how to show up in an international environment. Her official bio, which is extensive, is Jennifer Landgren is the North American Director of Digital Platforms and Solutions Hub at Dentsply Sirona, which is the world's largest dental technologies and consumables company. She's responsible for driving innovation to develop an integrated ecosystem of connected devices and software, leveraging AI at scale to enable aesthetic, functional, and clinical precision of dental treatments. Basically, what that means is it enables your dentist to use modern technology where everything talks to each other to do the best diagnosis and the best treatment. That's just what I've learned about it. She's a former product manager, so she's launched successful, innovative end-to-end dental workflow solutions. She's also passionate about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and leverages her leadership positions at Dentsply Sirona's Diversity and Inclusion Council and the employee resource groups to influence corporate strategy on diversity and inclusion. And in recognition of her contribution, she was named as the 2021 Paradigm for Parity Woman on the Rise, which acknowledges innovators who are breaking barriers in corporate leadership and showing the value of gender identity and racial equity in the workforce. Before joining Dentsply Sirona, she was a marketing leader for SaaS platform businesses dedicated to scaling growth and operational efficiency. She received an MBA from Babson College's Olin School of Business and a bachelor's from marketing from Suffolk University. And in her spare time, she enjoys road cycling, trying new foods, and traveling. She's now in Cambridge, Massachusetts with her husband, Henrik. She's a really interesting person with a lot to say. I'm really excited about it. Here's the interview with Jennifer Landgren. Jen Landgren, I am so happy I got you. On Speakers Who Get Results. Hooray.
Thanks for having me. I'm so honored. I think the work you do for women is absolutely incredible. So I'm very pleased to be here today.
Well, we've sort of worked peripherally together in that we're both working on the same, and you've seen some of the results. So I'll ask you about that in a minute. But first, let me ask you about your dream interview. If you were to interview somebody who's no longer with us, who would it be? What would you ask them? And who should be listening?
Well, I spent quite a bit of time thinking about this question. The person I chose is with us, and I hope that's okay. I'm a complete fangirl of an executive by the name of Bozoma St. John. She's currently the Chief Marketing Officer at Netflix. And I first learned about her back in 2015 timeframe when she took over a similar role at Uber when they were having this PR crisis with harassment against women in the workplace, and also female users of the app didn't necessarily feel safe. So she was sort of brought on board to clean up house. And I just thought that she was the representation of authenticity. You know, sometimes when you think about female executives have a particular vision of what that person should look like. But Basma is so unapologetic. Like, she has the biggest hair, the biggest statement earrings.
The brightest clothes.
The brightest clothes. And she's changing the face of what it looks like to be an executive. She speaks her mind, and she addresses issues that impact women in executive leadership roles, or those who are aspiring to get there head on. So I thought about interviewing her right away. And my audience, I would love to have an audience of amazing women to experience that, but I actually would love to have a room full of men, because sometimes the message that she has, you know, there are people who need to hear it. So yeah, that's the person I would choose to interview. Yeah,
and young women, I think, would have a group for the young women who aren't, you know, somehow Basma St. John found her courage.
Yes.
And, you know, and decided, okay, I'm going to be who I am. That doesn't come from nowhere. So, you know, somewhere where that develops, it's like the people who are funny, who you say, oh, they've always been funny, but they may have developed humor as a survival skill.
Right.
As a child, for instance. So someone who's unapologetically herself, I would want to know what made her decide, okay, I'm not going to blend in.
Yes, I think that's probably one of the first questions I'd ask, because as a Black woman, I've kind of been conditioned to think a lot of the things about who I am is wrong for society. You know, for example, I'm a first generation American, and English is my second language. So I sometimes use the wrong word. So I'm always conscious about how I'm speaking, or my presence, or, you know, the foods I eat. And she has managed to figure out how to be one person everywhere. Like, I'm one person at work, with my friends, with my family. How can I be me all the time, everywhere? You know, because it takes a lot of energy to maintain all of these different personas, or to code switch, as they like to call it. But yeah, you're right. That's one of the questions I would ask. How did you get to the point where you're authentically yourself in whatever room you step in, and people accept it?
Yeah. Well, and I imagine people didn't accept it for a while. So, you know, she's gotten to a point where they have to accept it.
Yes.
And maybe that's the message for all of us. Before I circle back to that, because I want to pursue this, tell us what it is you actually do. So there you are at Dentsply Sirona, which creates products for dentists, right?
Yes.
Most of us, all we know about the dentist is what we see in the chair. We go into the chair and we're either terrified or we're not. And they clean our teeth and they fill the cavities, et cetera. That's just the tip of the iceberg, right?
Yeah.
What is it that you do?
So Dentsply Sirona is one of those companies that is essentially ubiquitous. I mean, we have been around since the 1800s, providing dental products. And we offer things as simple as the regular everyday treatment center chairs, to the big scanners, the instrumentation that doctors and dental professionals use for procedures, software programs used to treatment plan cases. So really end-to-end solutions. What I do now is work in a new group called Digital Platforms and Solutions. We've been tasked with integrating all of these key components of a workflow to help dentists treat patients much more easily, much more seamlessly. We hate going to the dentist. I've never met a single person who looks forward to a dental appointment. How do we make the patient experience smooth and easygoing? How do we leverage technology, AI information to keep patient records in a central location so that you don't constantly have to explain your health history to your dental provider? How do we make treatment planning easy for the clinician? When it comes to using the data from diagnostics so they can make easy decisions and prescribe you with the right treatment at the right time, or even predict certain ailments that may come down the line based on your habits. There is a strong correlation with oral health and overall physical health. If we take care of our mouth, our body will thank us for it. So the work that I do is to help integrate all of these technologies, particularly in the North American market, and drive innovation for future solutions.
So Jen, that's wonderful. One of the things I know from having worked with the First to 50 program, which is Dentsply Sirona has an initiative to get 50% of the speakers being women, female dentists, and female dentists from all over the world, was really teaching me to look at all the machines and all that, all those scanners and the wraparound X-ray machine and so forth. And I remember the days where they would take an X-ray and then they would go into a little room, put it into the developing solution, and you didn't get a chance to look at it until later in the appointment. And now it's instantaneous. So I love it that it's the sort of thing that we take it for granted now, but took a lot of work to do that. So that really opened my eyes.
Yeah, it's so cool how much technology is available from the neck up. I mean, imagine you being able to see your face and a 3D model and visualize your future smile. I mean, the smile cannot be underestimated. I'm confidently speaking to you right now because I'm confident in my smile. I can eat what I want. I can communicate. I can move throughout the world, knowing that my mouth is going to help me, communicate and get to the next level in life. And oral health is critical for that. So I think this technology, being able to show patients the benefits of it in the chair is going to be highly impactful. So I'm so excited about working on these types of projects.
Well, you're really awesome. And I love what Dentsply Sirona is doing and really paying attention to get more equity and parity out there.
Yes.
Let's circling back to what we were talking about earlier. How do you then bring your full self to the stage as a Black woman? We were talking about authenticity. I'd love to hear more about that.
Well, I mean, the answer is not simple because it's been an incredible journey. I think that at the start, I just tried to emulate everyone else I've ever seen on stage, which typically are white men. And, there are certain characteristics that they have with the way that they project and pace across the room and command attention. And I think some of those things are, useful, but it wasn't me at first. And I had to really figure out, how do I sprinkle a little bit of myself throughout my presentations, whether it's you using humor or an opportunity to connect with people or tell a personal story, to really get my message across so I'm not copy and pasting. And I think that's why representation is important. Earlier when we talked about Bosma, is when you see someone with a different way of communicating, but getting the job done, I think it's truly impactful. So for myself, I've really spent a lot of time trying to understand my story, who I am as a person, what experiences that I've had that have shaped me and brought me to this space, whether it's a small meeting room with 50 dentists or a large conference room with like hundreds of people, and how does the information I have to share today connect my story to the audience. And people love humanity. They like to feel like they're not being sold to, they're not being sitting in a live infomercial. They want an opportunity to connect. So that's kind of how I figured out, as a Black woman, how do I bring myself to the stage? And another thing is I sort of had to get over the things that really weighed me down, that, oh my goodness, people are going to hear when I mess up words because I didn't pronounce it correctly, or they're going to look me up and down and wonder, what the heck is she doing here? Who is this person? These types of, things used to weigh me down before talks, and I just was filled with anxiety. I just kind of had to block all of that out. Yes, there are going to be preconceived notions. People are going to have whatever feelings they have about you the moment that they see you. That's just human nature. But that should never get in the way of you tactfully and confidently delivering your content.
I love that. Presentation skills have a lot to do with how you show up in the workplace as well. That's a big part of what I do, is helping women be heard at work. If you may have a seat at the table, but they're still not listening. How has that impacted you, especially because you've worked internationally? So sometimes you were the Black representative in Boston, sometimes you were the Black representative in London, and sometimes you were just one of the faces on the conference call, on the Zoom call. How have you handled that?
First of all, I try not to look at myself as the Black representative, because I think that's a huge responsibility to carry. I'm Jennifer. Yeah, there are characteristics around me. I am a Black person. I am a woman. But I am Jennifer. And I think I put me as an individual first. And you're always going to get, whenever you are the only, which a lot of women and women of color experience, you're the only person or the first person of this particular characteristics that someone have interacted with, you're going to be met with a lot of curiosity. And sometimes it could translate into microaggressions, right? Mm-hmm. So people are curious about where you're from, how did you get here, why are you here, and so on. So I'm always aware that these things are going to come up, and I almost even practice my responses to microaggressions, because sometimes it could catch you off guard and you giggle or you brush it off, and then you reinforce that behavior. You inform people that it's okay to address you in a certain way. It's okay to make certain comments around large groups of people. So practicing my responses to microaggressions, because sometimes it distracts people from you doing your job, right? So if you want to spend 10 minutes talking about my box braids, I can't get this project plan or this road mapping done, right, in the beginning of a meeting. So I kind of nip it immediately, just to kind of set the tone of how we're going to engage. And you have to do it tactfully, especially in large groups, because you don't want to humiliate people, but you also want to create those boundaries.
That's actually, I love it that you said that, because it's been thinking about anticipating a possible response and figuring out what you're going to say before you get caught off guard is, I love that. I love that. Everybody listen to that, because that's also a big part of what the work that I'm helping people with is, if you catch yourself doing sort of you said giggling, and that's like diffusing tension, which is what we're taught as little girls. How do you then be approached as a leader who's worth actually listening to? So,
yes,
I had my days as the dizzy blonde, which is not the same at all, but, it's a whole, not nearly the same sort of thing. But I remember the years of trying to be taken seriously for my brain.
Yes.
And funny, after 40, nobody seemed to care anymore. Like that is a memory from my 20s, actually. Have you found it different? We talk a lot about international business here.
Yes.
And one of the things that's so impressive about Dentsply Sirona is that it is a global company and global representation. So you're talking to people all over the world.
Yes.
What differences have you noticed in terms of how you communicate with different countries, different assumptions?
Yeah, I mean, that's such a great question. And I think that's the most incredible parts of my job, that I get to interact with people all over the world all the time. It's really something I'm grateful for. But yes, there are key differences in how people conduct business. And at first, I was really jumping in with both feet with my kind of American style of business. Roll up your sleeve. We're gonna knock this out. Burn the midnight oil. And I've met some opposition to that, depending on the country. Because certain countries have different work-life balance rules. And so at first, I was confused about that. I'm like, don't we want to get this done? And I think it's important for us to spend some time getting to know the customs of where we do business. And then having one-on-one with people. Sometimes we jump on a call and you have people, a core team across 3 to 4 countries, and we just sort of get to work. Spending like 15 minutes for a coffee chat, or like the Swedish people, like fika, and just having a coffee and getting to know people goes such a long way beyond just learning about the customs. We do this thing within our team called Gift of Time, where every week there's a random pairing of you and someone from your team, and you spend 15 minutes just getting to know them, just to kind of diffuse any assumptions you have about that person. So when you send an email or you request a meeting, they know who you are. They know a little bit about your story. You know something about them, and that I hope you're well sentence we like to put in the start of every email could be a little bit personalized, and then we can sort of get things done. So yeah, there are differences across the different countries I've worked in, but ultimately I think the human connection supersedes that all, and also having the understanding of the customs of that region.
It gets back to authenticity, doesn't it?
That's like the core word, being authentic, and it's not easy with certain cultures to really find out who the core of the person is. It takes time and commitment and effort. You just kind of have to make it a part of how you do business.
Yeah. And really talking. It's just really communicating and catching one's own assumptions.
Yes.
This is how I think the world works. Oh, that's not how you think the world works. Ah, yes. It is the joy. It is the joy of the international life, actually, is to be able to live and work with people from other parts of the world who just have different values. I keep thinking about a meme that was going around a couple of months ago where they said, a German is, you reach out to a German and they say, I'm on vacation, I'll get back to you in 2 months. And they reach out to an American, and it's a German's vacation message. And the American's vacation message is, I'm going to be offline for 2 hours because I'm having kidney surgery, but you can text me here, and I will be able to answer it after 3, things like that.
Oh man, so, it's kind of sad, to be honest, but there is some truth in there.
Mm-hmm.
And I've torn a page out of my foreign colleague's book and really focus on myself and turn off my computer after a certain time and be present with my family and practice self-care, and really go on vacation when we do go on vacation and not check emails. I think that's it takes incredible discipline to truly shut off.
It does. It really
and it's
does.
rewarding. It's rewarding when you do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's leave the phone behind. Oh my goodness, how could we do that?
Yeah.
I think we're all evolving new ways of doing that.
Yeah.
When you are out there speaking, you mentioned a little bit that you have a way of preparing yourself for speaking engagements. So I'll be curious to know what you do to prepare yourself.
Yes. I mean, of course, it's important to be brilliant at the basics, know your audience, know your material, rehearse. I think those are, important things we should all do. But, what I like to do is when I'm rehearsing is I like to record myself. I've been told that I can have the tendency to speak very quickly, but sometimes in the moment you don't recognize that. So record yourself going through your presentation, recognize your body language, how you're doing with what are you doing with your hands? I'm a hand talker. And so sometimes I see the audience member look at my hand because suddenly I go like this. That could be a distraction. So recording yourself, your body language, recognizing your tone, your speech, your presence, and just taking notes on that and fine tuning as you go. Another thing I like to do is before I speak, I always do a 5 to 10 minute calming meditation. And I have found that to be very helpful because I get so much anxiety and my heart race right before I start speaking. It just happens before I get into my zone. And having a calming meditation where you're telling yourself, I'm in control of my surroundings. I'm in control of my emotions. I am calm. I am present, and really getting yourself centered to have like a nice smooth start goes such a long way. And I mean, there's so many out there. I use Peloton, and I just love the quick, short 5-minute calming meditation, breathing and getting yourself together before going out in front of an audience. If you can, I think it's so helpful for me.
Yes. In the days when we were doing it live, I would always have somebody say, remind me to go into the bathroom before I was supposed to speak. And I may not have needed to use the toilet. What I needed was to go into the little room and close the door and breathe and focus and ground myself. So otherwise, being me, I would just keep talking. And then they say, oh, it's time to go on stage. And then I go right on stage and my brain is not, body's there, but the brain is not. First question is, do you do that when you are presenting in-house within the organization as well?
It definitely depends on the audience. I think sometimes if you're used to your colleagues and you're doing an update or you're informing them regular business, you have a comfort zone. Your team. There's going to be establishing rapport to start, some giggles, some exchange, and then boom, you go into a presentation. But when I have to do something external for the organization, or if I'm doing to a larger audience and I'm not used to, I always center myself because I think that, number one, I may be meeting new people within the company. There's 16,000 of us working here at Dentsply. So if you can imagine, you could meet someone new every day for many years to come. And you also have opportunities to connect with a larger audience base that could help push your initiative forward. One example is, in addition to my day job that I do at Dentsply Sirona, I'm also very active in diversity and inclusion initiatives. And that's really tied to building our culture, to ensuring that Dentsply Sirona is a place where you feel like you belong, that you will find a group within the organization that supports your values and also helps to tie to the overall business objectives. So you're meeting people that you will never work on your team. That could be in any part of the country, or the world. So I think it's important to always practice some form of calming if you have time, because sometimes we're jumping from meeting to meeting, even if it's 30 seconds, to really calm yourself before you present content that could be very impactful to the audience.
Yeah. That's often why I find it helps to memorize the beginning and the end. Like, what are the first couple of sentences and what are the last couple of sentences? So that, because A, that's what people remember, and B, that's when you're likely to be nervous. So that was something that one of my trainers taught me way early on when I first started this business. And I went, okay, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a little bit about the diversity and inclusion, where you see that going. I do notice, because I follow you and I follow Dentsply Sirona and the wonderful speakers that I've been working with, I do notice that there's a lot more diversity popping up within the company. Can you talk a little bit about how that's moving forward or not? And what would you advise someone who is feeling excluded if they feel like they're not being seen? What would you say?
So your first question, D&I at Dentsply Sirona has been incredible within the last several years, 2 years to be specific, since we embarked on this journey. I think that I would say, of course, it's a challenging topic to address, especially in a company of our size, but the building blocks were there. We just had to formalize it, right? You already had this incredible community of passionate, well-connected employees who are passionate about the business and also loved working with each other. So we just needed to put it in a framework. So having the building blocks there, I think it's critically important, but not all organizations have that. One of the things I would say for an individual who is feeling excluded within a company, which I've been there, I have felt excluded. I've gone to the bathroom and cried because, someone said something very insensitive to me and I didn't know how to place my emotions or address it. I've been there. First thing is connect with the people within your company who you identify with. There's so much power in community. Even if you have a small once a month meeting where you are just talking about some of the challenges that you're experiencing and looking for solutions, it's impactful to your experience at your job. The second thing I would say is look for ways to find allies, right? I think allyship is such a critical component. And some people like to actually use the word partnership instead of allyship, because sometimes allies kind of feel like there's a sense of obligation. Well, partnership is we're working together as a team. There's something in it for you and there's something in it for me to make this business a better place for customers, for the people that work here. And so I think having this conversation about allyship is critical within an organization, because you will always find people who are willing to mentor you, who are willing to create space so you can have a voice, right? Because I think that's one way allies can be instrumental. How do I ensure that the quietest person in the room who has amazing ideas when we're on one-on-one gets a chance to communicate that in a meeting? How do I bring them into projects that I think they're going to thrive in? How do I ensure that they're getting the credit for the work that they do? So I think those are kind of two areas. And it seems daunting for one individual to have to do that. And in fact, people of color tend to carry the burden of having to educate and to bring some of these initiatives forward. So that's why I think it's important to have a framework within an organization, whether it's a baby one, piloting different programs, or a well thought out multi-year strategic plan where you have more councils and employee resource group and strategic partnerships and benchmarks and so on. But the key is to just get started. Start with that small community.
That's wonderful. Just one more question about allyship. What do you say to the people who say, I would love to have an ally. I know what I'm going to get from them. I know what I will get. What's in it for them? What is the benefit to the ally of being an ally?
I think that's a great question. The first thing I would say is anytime that you help the person with the least privilege, everyone benefits, right? And I think that's how you have to look at it, is that I'm not doing this for the individual. I'm doing this for the betterment of the entire organization or society, right? So, for example, if you just think about, the playground as a child, if you invite the kid who everybody doesn't play with, suddenly you have more people to play with. The game is more fun. There's more ideas. Someone is bringing more toys, a fresh perspective. So I think that the benefit of allyship is that you're bettering the culture of where you work. You won't have people on your team. No leader wants a person on their team that feels ostracized, because there's a direct link to feeling like you belong and performance.
Yeah.
And if you're performing well, the company performs well. So that is the benefit. It's like, how do I help my company to perform well? How do I help my company win?
And turn around and help someone else.
Precisely.
If you've been helped, turn around and help someone else, and lift as you climb, as the saying goes. So,
yes.
Well, Jennifer Landgren, this has been such a delight. I've been a fan of yours for quite a while now, so I'm so glad I finally got you on the podcast. I will be posting all sorts of information about how to learn more about Dentsply Sirona and you and what you do in the show notes. Jennifer Landgren, Jen, it's been such a delight to have you on Speakers Who Get Results. I'm a big fan of yours. Do you have one suggestion to someone who says, I want to be awesome like she is? How could one start?
Wow, I think that's incredible if someone does say that, but I think I would start with understanding who I am, like just really writing down the things that make you unique, and it's rooted down into your authenticity. Who am I as an individual? And then also, what types of things am I passionate about? What do I want to work on? How do I want to change the world? I know it sounds like a big task, but starting there to just really understand your foundation, and then see where that takes you.
I love that. Thank you so much. This has been Speakers Who Get Results. I'm Elizabeth Bachman, your host. And let me remind you that if you're curious where your presentation skills are, you could take our free 4-minute assessment. That's www.speakforresultsquiz.com. And that's where you can see where your presentation skills are strong and where perhaps a little bit of support could get you the results that you need and the recognition that you deserve. This has been Elizabeth Bachman. I'll see you on the next one.
We have just concluded another great episode of Speakers Who Get Results with your host, Elizabeth Bachman. If you got value from today's episode, please feel free to share us with your friends and colleagues. You may also visit elizabethbachman.com for additional resources. Be sure to tune in every week for new episodes, and thanks for tuning in.